Recognize Ms. Greene for any testimony you care to offer on any amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for hearing me talk about these amendments today. I'd like to talk about amendment number 33 for the Milcon VA Appropriations Act. My amendment cuts the $73 million increase in funding for the NATO Security Investment Program. The United States overwhelmingly contributes more than our fair share to NATO for Europe's defense, and it's time European countries pay their due. While our own border is overrun by border crossers and deadly fentanyl, with 300 Americans being murdered daily, we continue to send hundreds of billions of dollars to NATO to defend Ukraine's democracy, even though they aren't a NATO member nation. Investing in NATO security is an America Last policy. President Trump was exactly right when he called on European nations to put the required minimum of 2% of their GDP toward NATO defense spending. Most NATO countries still don't meet that requirement, and the U.S. ends up paying for 70% of the alliance's defense. This is outrageous. I would also like to point out here, yeah, they pay 70%, but the rest of the European countries and our NATO allies are paying very little with the NATO Security Investment Program. The second amendment I would like to talk about is amendment number 98, would strike the funding for the Office of Resolution Management, Diversity, and Inclusion. I'm having a hard time understanding why our Republican bill here, appropriations bill, has funding for an Office of Resolution of Management, Diversity, and Inclusion in the first place. The Office of Resolution Management, Diversity, and Inclusion in the VA is charged with promoting woke DEI initiatives. My amendment would strike over $86 million of funding for this woke office, which provides trainings for VA employees to teach them about their implicit bias, among other things. Instead of spending millions of taxpayer dollars on identity politics and ideology, we should put that money towards making the VA an agency that actually helps our veterans and our heroes who served our military and desperately need good health care. I know the veterans in my district would appreciate $86 million to help them not to pay attention to identity politics. Sick and injured veterans don't care if the VA employee serving them has checked their white privilege or anything else of that matter. They just want to get the treatment they need. And I would like to remind the committee how many veterans commit suicide, especially waiting treatment in the VA. There's something important to talk about here. With the Office of Resolution Management, Diversity, and Inclusion, they offer instructor-led and virtual instructor-led training, applying cultural competence in a multicultural VA, combating incivility in the workplace, diversity tension in the workplace, managing gender diversity, managing implicit bias, valuing workforce diversity and workplace inclusion, practicing effective diversity and inclusion in the workplace for managers, understanding micro behaviors in the VA work environment. Employee mandatory training includes diversity, equity, and inclusion training for executives, managers, and supervisors. This is filled within the Department of Veteran Affairs with the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Access Action Plan that you can read about. But there's also involvement here with ACORN that talks about people's implicit bias categories, which is a person's unconscious attitudes about other communities. Again, this is the VA where we're supposed to be taking care of our veterans. I know we all believe in America being an equal place for all Americans. We shouldn't have to treat people different based on gender, sexuality, identity, race, whatever it may be. We acknowledge that all Americans are equal. We acknowledge that everyone has equal rights, as it says so in our Constitution and our civil rights. So there's no need to spend $86 million for this inclusion, diversity, and equity in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.